Hello everyone, my name is Erica and welcome to my channel if you're new here. So I am a professional second languages teacher who teaches Spanish here on YouTube. And for today's video, I wanted to talk about how to gain fluency in any language. So for some context, my native language is English. However, I speak Spanish fluently and Italian pretty close to fluently. I have conversational Portuguese and I'm currently learning Serbian and able to have some simple conversations in Serbian. So I speak 5 languages. I also went to university to be a professional second languages teacher. So I think I have some pretty good experience on how to learn a second language effectively and pretty quickly. So today I'm going to give you those tips if you're interested. So if you like this video or you want to learn Spanish, as this is a Spanish channel, please consider subscribing and let's get started. So these tips here that I'm going to give you is a combination of what I learned in university. Again, I went to university and got my degree in being a second languages teacher. And then these are also tips that I learned while I was actually learning Spanish. I learned Spanish primarily in high school, but I was always very, very good at Spanish and I learned it super quickly. And it's because I actually used this main tip here. So I'm going to share that with you. And if you follow these, I am sure that you are going to learn Spanish or your target language, any language, very quickly. Okay? Here, I'm also going to talk about are classes actually necessary? Is it necessary to pay someone to learn your target language? I'll get into that here, okay? So the first tip I have for you, and what I believe is one of the most important if you are learning from home, or even if you're having classes, I still think you need to do this on your own time, is to consume authentic media. Now, what is that? So authentic media is basically a movie, podcast, books, music, anything that comes from that country and is intended for that population. So, for example, you're reading a Mexican newspaper, you're listening to Argentinian music, like authentic media from that culture, not something that was made for language learners. Okay? So, why is this so important? You need to consume this specific type of media. The first thing is that it exposes you to culture. So, culture and language go hand in hand. You can't truly understand one without knowing the other. Now, what do I mean by that? Even if you think in English, in Spanish, we have a lot of idioms, connotations, and so if you understand a culture, you're able to understand like why maybe this word is used in this context and stuff like that, okay? So knowing about the culture, you cannot skip it if you want to be able to, speak a language fluently. You need to be able to understand the culture. And what better way of doing that by watching movies, listening to music, especially if you live in a country, for example, like me. I live in Canada. How am I supposed to, learn Spanish here and consume Hispanic culture from this country here? How I can do that is by consuming media. Okay, so another reason why it's so important is that the language used in that media is used in real life context. If you might have experienced this, if you learned French throughout school, then you go to France and you find that it's actually pretty hard for you to communicate. You're not as fluent as you thought. That's probably because you never actually had to, use your French in a real life context. So by watching, or consuming media, you're able to hear the language being used outside of the classroom, and it helps you put text into context. Okay, so again, just learning Spanish, French, Italian, whatever language, just in the classroom is really going to limit your ability to actually use it in a real life setting. So by consuming authentic media, hearing the language being used, from a news video, um, reading books and stuff, is going to help you when you actually need to use a language to use it in your real life, everyday setting. Okay, so it's exposing you to that. That's why it's so important. So, where can you find these authentic resources? Okay, so you can do this for, I'm going to say like whatever language. Maybe for example, Netflix, it might have some limitations, but so this is how I became fluent in Spanish. And I was always like top of my class despite not I had never gone to a Spanish-speaking country. No one in my family spoke Spanish, but I was always the top of my class because I used this, okay? So Netflix, I would always watch TV shows and movies in Spanish. Um, and then I would have the English subtitles on, but just hearing the language and, picking up on some words as I was watching, it put me way ahead of my classmates who, weren't doing that because I was exposed to it, right? So find movies and TV shows, whatever, on Netflix in your target language. That's going to be a big help. Music, again, I love this. So for music, it's super important. I listen to music. My Spotify is filled with so many different languages because I just love listening to music from these countries, and it also helps me speak and learn vocabulary. So start to learn the lyrics of your favorite songs. There's always going to be a type, for whatever genre you like, that language will have like that type of music. So for me, when I was learning Spanish, I loved Enrique Iglesias and Alvaro Soler. So I would listen to their songs, I would learn the lyrics, I would start to sing, and that helped me learn the language, right? Um, even if you're listening and you don't know what you hear this word and you don't know what it means, you can search it up. That's you learning, right? And as you're driving to work, you're hearing the language. It's that exposure that we're trying to find. Another thing you can do is read books, newspapers, or listen to podcasts. Even you just do a Google search, like I don't know, for Spanish, so do like Spanish newspaper. I'd get El País. You can find a podcast, books. If you're starting with books, it might be a good idea to start with children's books because the language is usually simpler, and then work your way up from there. Another thing that I do is follow creators who are native speakers of the language on social media. So that way, when we all spend time on social media, so that way when I'm scrolling, I'm still being exposed to my target language, and I'm getting that sense of like immersion, right? From this country in Canada, where no one here speaks Spanish, no one speaks Italian, right? So these are my tips. Make sure you're consuming authentic media. Okay, now for my second tip. This is immersion. So once you've done this, this is stuff you can do from your own home. Here, it takes a little bit more getting out of the house and putting yourself out there, okay? So here, it's important you do this because realistically, you'd never be using the language from your own house, right? You're going to be using it when you go to work, when you go traveling, when you meet with people. So it's important that you take every opportunity, you go out of the house and you take every opportunity to experience the culture. And these are some tips how I did it from a country that speaks, basically where I live, they speak only English, okay? So the first thing that I did is you can go to, or in my case, I worked at, restaurants that are from your language's culture. So I worked at a Mexican restaurant. Why this helped is because my coworkers spoke Spanish, the clientele spoke Spanish, and they would only, some of them would only speak Spanish. So I was forced to practice my Spanish. I also learned about the food. I would listen to Spanish music or Mexican music every day. So it was a really great way for me to immerse myself in the culture while I was in Canada. Even if you just go to, if like you can't work, if you just go to one of those restaurants, it would also be helpful because you're still surrounded by that ambiance, right? Something else that I did is I'd go to a lot of events. So I went to like Latin American festivals. If you can go to markets, I also took bachata lessons. Again, just me being immersed in the culture, you might meet other people from that culture, and it'll help you make friends, which I'll get to why that's so important after. Another thing you can do, and I think most big cities will have this, is go to a language exchange. What that is you'll have people who are like, for example, you'll have someone from Argentina, and then you'll have you, and they want to learn English and you want to learn Spanish. You guys will go to this. It's usually held at like a bar or cafe or something, and you guys just talk and you switch between the both languages with each other, and it's great because you're talking to a native speaker, right? Always talking to a native speaker is so important. Okay, so language exchange, or they're called language tandems. I think if you put that in Google and put in your city, you might find one where you live. Another thing you can do, plan your next vacation in a place that speaks that language, and make sure you try your best to talk to locals. Even if you're just saying hello, thank you, how much does this cost? That's a great way, and that's really going to take you to that next level, actually speaking with a native speaker. Okay? just doing that is going to really bump up your language, right away. Okay, the next one that I did too is make friends. This is so important because most people love it when you take an interest in learning their culture, learning their language, and so they're going to love to help you in your language learning journey. So if you make friends, you can learn more about the culture, learn more about the language as you hear them talk, learn about the slang, learn how like real, people talk, not just from the classroom, right? So make friends and I promise your language will improve. All right? Okay. So, now we get to the big question. Are taking classes actually necessary? Do you need to pay, to go to a language learning class, every Thursday? So my answer to this is yes and no. So, and this is what it depends on. So, what is your goal? Is your goal just to, when you go to Mexico, to be able to speak with the people there, just have a casual conversation? Or is your goal to be able to write essays, to be able to do reports, for work, host like events in that language? Like, what is your goal? How much of that language do you actually need to know? Okay. If you need to work and you need to like do all that report stuff, I would say that language classes is probably necessary, um, because you need to learn like the very specific grammar, right? And sometimes it can be kind of hard to just use that just from consuming media. From consuming media and doing that, you will learn to speak 100%. But, having a teacher there, having there someone to explain everything is going to make it a lot quicker, I think, for you to actually speak to that level. Um, okay. What do you need to use the language for? Again, that's the same idea. And then how dedicated are you and how much time do you have? So if this is something that you need to learn really, really quick and you need to be fluent, I would say go get classes, get like a professional teacher to teach you. But if you just want to do it on Duolingo or one of those other apps and you have a lot of time and you're super dedicated, yes, 100%, I think you'll be able to speak. But you need to be the one to put in that effort because there's not going to be anyone else to keep you accountable. So it kind of depends on you. Another big thing, and I think this is a huge misconception, is something that I was told growing up, and then when I experienced it, it wasn't true. So I lived in Argentina and in Spain, and again, I was learning Spanish, and I was always told, "Oh, don't worry, once you go there, you'll be fluent." That is not true. So is it enough if you go spend a couple months or a month or a year living in that country? Will you be fluent? It depends all on you. You're not just going to magically become fluent. For me, when I went to Argentina, I didn't come back speaking any better Spanish. When I lived in Spain for a year, I did come back speaking better, but that's because I was forced to use it. Did I come back with a perfect accent, with perfect grammar? No. Because, I don't know, maybe that was on me. I didn't get out enough. I didn't talk to enough people. So it's not enough if you just go to that country. If you want to learn Mandarin and you go for China for a month, you're going to learn a little bit. Are you going to come back fluent? I don't think so. So it kind of depends on you and how much you're going out of your way, how quickly you learn a language, how much effort you're putting into. Then, yeah, you could do it, but it's not just going to magically happen. So if it's necessary to take classes, yes or no, it all depends on you. It depends on how you learn. It depends how fluent and how quickly you want to become fluent. But anyway, these were my tips. I hope you enjoyed. I hope they were helpful towards you. And please leave a comment on your thoughts on the video and subscribe if you liked it. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.